start? All right, folks. First things, I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you today. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know so well. My name is Steve Schaefer. I am the criminology guy here at the college. Currently, I am enrolled at California University of Pennsylvania, where I'm going to hopefully, which I have no doubt I will, obtain my doctorate next summer. It will be geared towards school violence and school shootings. I'm currently doing a professional portfolio upon that. Part of my coursework, I have an instructor development course, and this is part of that instructor development course. Once I complete this course, I have two different presentations I have to give. This one mini presentation is going to be on research-based evidence as it relates to the crime rate and importance to the crime rate. I will do a second one in August, and this will also enable me to teach, hopefully, at police academies. I'm already in touch with IUP, and I think it will be a great avenue for our students here who want to become police officers to have that nice pipeline with IUP, where I believe I'll be teaching in township. So I do greatly appreciate your time today. What we're going to talk about today, just 10 minutes, it's really can be very in-depth. This is not going to be very in-depth. What we're going to talk about is evidence-based research and its importance to the crime rate. And one of the biggest things I think we need to understand is to know my audience. We have varied backgrounds in here. So evidence-based research may mean something a little bit different to everybody else. You have evidence-based research and evidence-based practices in the medical field and the psychological field, but also it is important to know the importance of it when we talk about it with criminology. So we're going to look at evidence-based research and take a look at it and how important it is to attack and understand and better the crime rate. So evidence-based research is conducting research in the outcomes of various police work. You're going to take a look, and basically we want to see what works. We want to understand our problems, our issues, what's going to work in lowering the problems we have with various crimes. We're going to evaluate current practices to combat crime. What is working? What police departments are going? One of the biggest things that we see now, and I believe it is valuable and very important, is community-oriented policing. We need to get back with the public as police officers to gain their trust, have transparency. What worked, why does it work, and how does it work? A lot of it's going to depend on the region you're in, where you're at, what your targets are looking at. And what we're going to do is take a scientific look. I always say criminology is, make no mistake, it is a science. There's a lot of science behind it. We're going to take a scientific look at crime and use research and statistical analysis. Now, when we talk about evidence-based, it's very easy in criminology to understand that it's not a courtroom evidence we're talking about. That's the thing we have to understand when we talk about evidence-based research in criminology. Evidence is scientific evidence, not criminal evidence. Criminology, we're always going to use criminal evidence. When we're talking about crimes, we're looking at various crimes and what we're trying to stop, what we're trying to slow down. We're going to actually look at it through a scientific look. The founder, by many believed to be, is the founder of evidence-based policing, EBP, is Lawrence W. Sherman. He used research into everyday police procedures, which is absolutely important. We have an officer here, and you can very readily say, we have to understand what is working, why it's working, and how we can do that. It's going to help guide the police to make good decisions according to the statistics and research. Not only what works to reduce crime, but of course, what's going to work with our budgets, what's going to work with our manpower. This is all the things that it's very easy to kind of gloss over. When we talk about training, most police officers are going to say training, training, training. Well, you don't always get the training because of your budgetary concerns, because of your manpower concerns. So that's what's all going to go into this. I'm going to show you a link at the end of the class. I'm probably not going to be able to show it here, of course, because I only have 10 minutes. But Lawrence Sherman, the criminologist, does an excellent presentation and understanding what directed patrols are in various areas. So the second part of this is the crime rate. What is a crime rate? So a crime rate is going to describe the number of crimes reported to law enforcement agencies per 100,000 people in their total population. The crime rate is calculated by dividing the number of reported crimes by the total population, and then that result is going to be multiplied by 100,000. So for example, in 2016, and this is from the FBI, crime in the United States, there were 9,167,220 estimated offenses in the United States. These are all different kinds of offenses that, of course, are reported. This is not going to show the dark side of crime, the crimes that are not reported to the police. So that would be our top number. Below, you have 323,127,513 total population of the United States. You divide that into the 9 million estimated offenses, times it by 100,000, and we have 2,837 offenses per 100,000 people in the United States in 2016. So what I wanted to do was also show that you can do this for various crimes as well. One of the hot spots and the speaking points that I think we've all seen in the news is the amount of homicides that happened in the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago in 2016 had 762 homicides. Their population is about 2.705 million. That gives us a homicide rate of 28 homicides per 100,000 people. In contrast, the city of Pittsburgh, of course we're close to the city of Pittsburgh, had 56 homicides in 2016 with about 303,625 people in population. That gives a homicide rate of about 18.4 per 100,000. So just to kind of see, I wanted to show you how evidence-based practice is going to go into calculating and looking at combating these crime rates. And we're not going to work now, are we? There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what works. We're going to look at scientific methods, statistical reviews for evidence research that can be used to combat criminal activities. Is it going to take more officers? Are we going to look at directed patrols? Do we need more officers on foot patrol? Do we need to get into these schools and have more education? You know, of course we're going to look at socioeconomic status with a lot of this, look at the education, the rate of education, the quality of education in the public schools and what have you. There's so much that goes into this. This is where the evidence-based policing is going to start to work so we can actually combat it. One of the first studies was 1974, the Kansas City experiment. First of its kind scientific study in policing practices, and it looked at targeted and preventative patrols. There were 15 total areas in 1974 we looked into Kansas City. 5 of those areas were patrolled in a normal fashion. Everyday patrols riding around. 5 others had double patrols. They put more officers in. They really targeted those 5 areas. And then the other 5 areas had no patrols whatsoever. I would love to do a presentation on the ethics of all of this because the people in those areas did not know this was happening. And ethically, was this something that should have been condoned? Were we putting people's lives in danger? The strange thing about all this is the study actually showed that there was no noticeable differences in a rate of occurrence of crimes that were deemed preventable. They were looking at the preventable crimes as burglary, robbery, motor vehicle theft, criminal mischief, and larceny theft. So how can these studies such as this improve crime rates? Well, you're going to take a look and see if the patrols had nothing to do with it. If it did not lower the crime rate, we got to find out why. Scientifically look at it and see, why is this working? Why is this not working? So our relationship, the Center for Evidence-Based Crime Policy at George Mason University, wonderful website. A lot of my information on the research into this came from that. Expanded on that idea of the Kansas City experiment. They seek to make a scientific research a key component in decisions about crime and justice policies. The 4 key research areas is going to assist the police with evidence-based practices in combating the crime rates. 1 is evidence-based policing. We mentioned it earlier. What works? How can we prevent crime And I think one of the biggest things, especially in today's climate, how do we improve the trust of the citizens? Doesn't matter where we're at, doesn't matter what department we're in, we need to get in and earn the trust of those citizens, gain that trust again. How can the police incorporate research into their daily practice? There's also crime in place. What we're going to look at is hotspots. Where are the crimes happening at? How are these crimes happening? What targets are we looking at? Not only where are these crimes, what the hotspots are, what those crimes are, and what it's going to take to lower those crime rates. We also have systematic reviews, constant reviewing of the practices at work, because we have to understand when we're talking about policing, much like teaching, it's a constant evolution. There are new techniques constantly, there are new practices constantly, whether it be new grants, new trainings, new techniques, we must stay on top of that and systematically review all of this. And lastly, we want to take a look at is a criminal justice policy. What policies do we have that's going to be in place to support the relationship that's going to have evidence-based policing and evidence-based practices? Make it important to understand you don't just want to throw officers at a problem, because that could make it worse. We want to take a look at what's going to work for that certain exact community and have those policies in place. What I do have, and like I said, it's only a 10-minute presentation, but Cambridge Ideas, a crime experiment, is from Lawrence Sherman. What he does is goes into those directed patrols. He identifies hot spots, and that's going to be a big concern in a lot of areas. What are the hot spots, and what's it going to take? Is it going to take more officers? Is it going to take an overt presence, or is it going to take a more subversive, maybe a covert undercover operations and what have you? Does anybody have any questions on research-based practices or crime rates or what we're looking at into going into here? There's so much more that could go into this. This was a very basic, like I said, a 10-minute presentation as almost a little bit of an introductory. Yes, sir.
What was the duration of the 5, 5, and 5?
The duration, I believe, was 6 months. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I believe it was for 6 months. And I find it fascinating. Now, 1970s is a different time, of course, we can all say that. But to justify sending no patrols into an area actually boggles my mind. It's amazing. I understand the concept, but I can't understand the ethics of that, because not one of the people who lived there knew that that was happening. But it was even more amazing is nobody noticed. That's what was really amazing. In all of those areas, the areas where they had double the police, they didn't notice the double police. In the areas where there were no police, there was no noticeable difference of complaints or where was the police at, and I mean, they still responded to the calls there. They just were not proactively policing there. Any questions? Again, I thank you. This means a great deal to me, and I think ultimately this is, me going through this and getting this is going to help BC3 ultimately, and help my students. And as Nicole has been very integral with my program, she knows how important that is with me. So, all right, folks, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.